America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. I'm actually here for town tonight because the mayor is on vacation. Thanks, Bruce. We have a roll call.
Trustee Chamberlain?
Here.
Trustee Ford?
Here.
Trustee Goldstein? President Pro Tem Haber?
Here.
Trustee Howard?
Here.
Trustee Jamerson?
Here.
President Norris absent. Clerk?
All right. Have a motion for approval of the minutes of January 8, 2019.
So moved.
As amended.
As amended. Well, it wasn't the final agenda. I think I already include the amendment.
Okay. Then, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstaining, because I was not there. I assume there is no village ecologist report, because I don't see it. Treasurer's report. Mr. Hale, what is that?
Thank you. Okay, first of all,
Can you go up there, Hale?
sure. The handout I didn't really get to look at earlier is the December report is not to be construed as accurate. It's the cash summary report. If you look at it, it shows our total investment or total balance in the right income of $9,132,000. If you look at November, it shows $12 million. Susie did transfer all the money that should be reflected into the investment account, which is up. I'm looking at the JP Morgan statement as of December 31st, and it shows an actual balance of really close to 11 million. So we know that's accounted for, and it's just to give you a little history that we met. Chris, when did we meet? In December?
Yeah.
Like mid-December, and we set the cash on hand requirement at around $800,000. There was an excess of funds between checking and savings of about $2.5 million. What was happening was, in the prior relationship, as an investment matured in the JP Morgan investment account, the way our account was set up, that liquidation, the proceeds went into our checking account. So our checking account acquired millions of dollars as everything came due, and then as JP Morgan reinvested it, it came out of the checking account. But there was a kind of a lag. Well, we've since signed off on paper saying that we don't want that to happen anymore. The only thing that's going to happen is the interest that's we're earning is going to be transferred over to the checking and operating accounts, and we'll keep our primary investment balance pretty much intact. So we're not doing this shuffling back and forth, because what it created was we were accumulating too much money in a non-interest bearing way in the checkings and savings accounts. So now the investment account will be separate. We will have the flow of interest, but we won't be transferring money until we need to liquidate or replenish our $800,000 base. So that's really our target numbers to have on hand. And we're about there now. We checked that tonight, Chris and I, and with Susie's confirmation. So I just don't know. I'll have to talk to Susie to see why she didn't transfer that total about $3 million over to the investment account that's there on your statement. So that's a little discomforting in this case.
So is that in the general fund, that extra $3 million? Or?
Yes, yes, but it should end up at least 2.2 of it is going to end up under the investment account, because that's where we're at. We're at about almost 11 million in the JP Morgan now. As far as the performance of the fund, we've been able to really upgrade with a lot of this investment at what I think are the highest rates in a while now. I can make this available to everybody too. Our CD rates are around 2 to 3%. The last batch of this investment of about $1 million or $2 million is all around 2.8. We did capture some 3%. And a new investment that we brought into this is that we now have some corporate paper. Corporate paper was always in our investment statement, if you will, and the state of Illinois opened up the borders for municipalities too. So we now own two corporate papers, American Express and Goldman Sachs. And just to give you a comparison, the average yield that we're seeing on CDs was, like I said, around 2.6, 2.7 overall. We were able to get 3.2 and 3.5 on the corporate paper. So we're not going into that heavier. I said we don't want to go over 10% for sure of our investable assets. Since it's our first foray into that, we're going to keep it right now at these levels. We don't have any maturities till May, and there'll be about, I think it's around $500,000 that will come due in May. But then the laddering will start to kick in too, so we'll have things pretty much every month after a while coming due. If we need to, the par of the investments to keep it at 800, everything's pretty liquid and can be moved over in 24 hours if we need to supplement the $800,000 in the operating account. So I think that's it. Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. James.
So in the past, when a CD matured, it just ended up in the checking account. And when we balanced the checking account, we didn't notice that there was an extra, however many hundreds of thousands of dollars in there.
Oh, no, we did. But prior to a recent kind of, I guess, position was that we maintained a large amount of cash in our savings and checking account. It wasn't until, I'd say, the past 6 months that we looked at it and said, the village doesn't need to hold this amount of money. I mean, originally it was probably, I think our original JP Morgan contribution was somewhere around $5 million. So we kept 5 or 6 in our operating accounts, and then recently, over the past couple of years, we whittled that down to maybe, I think, it was about 3.
Yeah, maybe I can add something to that.
Yeah.
Rick, this has been a process, and part of it was, we had these savings accounts that were different than the investment account. And actually, the savings accounts were there to, for capital expenses. That's where the money came from to build the village hall. We brought down the balance in the savings accounts first and left the investment account alone. As we've been looking at our needs, and we got that cash projection, the budget projections and so on, that's what was leading us to try to minimize balances in accounts that were not interest-bearing or had lower rates of interest or lower rates of income in them. So that's what Hal's talking about, yes. But there was a mechanism that was set up that the maturities would go into the checking account, and then when the investment advisor wanted to buy something, they would move the money back from the checking account into the investment account. And we talked about it, and we seemed like there were a lot of transactions to be accounting for, and more transactions means more possibilities for miscategorization or missing things. So this is all a process. And we're trying to get to a better place in terms of cash management and increasing our ability to invest rather than keep it in.
Right, and it goes back really to the days when we used the ICTIP funds, and it was like a safe haven, very low interest bearing, and they actually ran into trouble, but most of the village's funds were kept in this ICTIP, so we never really weighed that versus the investment advisor. But since we went to the investment advisor, it was kind of not 100%, let's move everything over. Now I think everybody's comfortable, so we moved everything over. But it was accounted for and reconciled, yes.
So the second question I have then is, are we developing a process so that when the mature and they stay in the investment fund,
Yes.
that they don't stay there earning a minimum amount of interest. We
Yeah.
have a process already
Yes.
developed that.
The investment advisor.
Invested into something more.
Yeah, the advisor will call me or email me with every single maturity and say, we've got something coming up in 2 days, 3 days, a week, because it doesn't do much to be that far ahead of it, outside of that time frame. And then she'll send me a list of candidates of what she thinks are good to roll it over. It was only during this transition where we were, and the accounts were a little bit handcuffing in that we couldn't go right from our savings account to the investment account. We had to go through the checking account. So we moved everything from savings to checking over to investment. It's just the way it was set up. And that was just between Chase and JP Morgan.
And please understand that there's a, Hal and our advisor, Hal as our treasurer, he has the decision-making authority on our investments. So we do watch, we, Riverwoods, our treasurer, actually watches exactly what's going on there, and they have an obligation to communicate directly with Hal. So there's that kind of security there.
Right, and Danielle, who's the advisor, is very good about notifying me of the maturities. I have now a list of the actual maturity dates of every single investment, the cash flow. The reports are great, and we just got these together for the year end. But it's really just been the past 6 months, would you say, where we basically came to agreement that we're not going to maintain a large cash balance in the savings or checking and trying to get everything over.
Those cash projections really helped us toward a better management. So that was really.
And right now, we're yielding about $246,000 we expect on cash flow from investments out of that.
Trustee Allen?
2 questions.
Sure.
One, did I hear you say that we had for a period of a couple of years, $5 million in the non-interest-bearing checking account?
No. It was originally, before we took on the advisor, we started using JP Morgan Chase. At that point in time, yes, everything was in these IPTIT funds.
And how long was this $5 million in these non-interest-bearing accounts?
It wasn't interesting. IFTIP was kind of the way municipalities.
It's a common municipal fund.
Okay.
So we had it in there originally, then we moved it to JP Morgan, but we did keep in anticipation, there was probably 2.5 to 3 million as this was coming into vogue. But then once this finished up, that's when the impetus came to say, okay, we don't have a huge capital need on the budget or in the foreseeable future. So in the past 6 months is when we decided to move it over.
Correct, I understand, thank you. My second question is, on the road and bridge, we budgeted last year $140,000 for the year. And our cost came in at $670,000. That's a 5-fold increase. I'm sure there's a reason for it, but where did we spend $500,000 over anticipated budget?
Well, didn't we push up some road work from next year to 2019 to 2018?
Right, and that's kind of a placeholder number right now that's going to be adjusted. I just sent Susie the letter today, how to divvy out, we did $600,000 worth of road work, but only half of that was village work. And I always wait to the end, so I have final numbers for everybody, inclusive of the percentages of engineering. So I just sent that to Susie today and Bob. So that's going to get
That'll
that
change.
down. And it's
And it's just, I know we did 2 years because of the asphalt pricing and all that.
yeah, but Forest Glen, they go over the year.
The statement of revenue and expenses, we intend to have a full year review as we did last year, and we're targeting the second meeting in February for Bob to come in and go over all these things and give us more detail on it. So if you look at this as kind of a preliminary shot, and we'll have an annual report, if you will, in February with final numbers.
Anyone have any other questions for the treasurer?
Yes.
Trustee Chairman?
So, this may be
question for Bob, I think it is, but I'm just wondering if we're on target as far as maintaining our reserves for our water and our sewer accounts.
I'll let Chris.
I hear Chris saying yes.
Yes,
Okay. that's-
yes, we are.
Okay, thanks.
If nothing else, thanks, Al.
Okay, thank you.
Engineers report.
No more.
Director of Community Services.
Of the 7 businesses that require license in the village, the business license application ordinance went through 4 years ago. I believe 3 have passed inspection, 4 have failed. Most of these are restaurants that require business license. Some are doing better than others with code violations, and one, we have a language barrier. So once they pass inspection, they get their business license valid for all of calendar year this year. That's all I have.
Any questions for the Director of Community Services? If none, I assume there's no zoning board of appeals report, plan commission report?
No report?
But.
There's always a but.
But there is a hearing scheduled for the next plan commission meeting on February 7th. The subject of the hearing is a request by a group home for assisted living for seniors to be allowed in a single-family home. And for those of you who don't know, the village a couple of years ago went through some study and adopted an amendment to our zoning ordinance to provide a procedure for considering a request like this. Under the federal housing law, the ADA were required to make reasonable accommodation to people with disabilities or conditions that don't allow them to access our housing on the same means as someone who doesn't have those problems, challenges. And so the hearing will be at 7:30. We've published in the paper, sent out notices to residents and non-residents within 300 feet. And there's a sign posted on the property, and the petitioners will be making their presentation at the planning commission.
Thank you. Police report, Bruce was unable to be here tonight because of a family emergency. I don't think he actually attached the police report to the minutes, or to the final agenda pack, because I didn't see it, so I guess we'll have to defer his report till next month. Village Attorney's report.
Everything is on the agenda.
Standing committee reports, update on Flatwoods Heritage Center. Trustee Chamberlain, you have anything to report on that?
Well, as a matter of fact, I drove to and from Springfield today to give our 3-minute presentation, so that was pretty fun.
How'd that go?
Well, of course, they don't respond to you, but interestingly, they do ask if anyone has an objection, but no one did. And they didn't have any questions either. However, when I was out in the hallway, the chair came up to me and said, "Oh, that was a good presentation." So I guess it went well. I also sent to everyone a draft of the survey for our residents. And I want everyone to understand, this is merely a draft, and it's just the state of things as they are now. And so what I would really like for people is assistance with topics, or different types of questions, that sort of thing. So I'm basically going to act as a note taker for the group, but if anyone has comments you want me to take back to the group, I'm happy to do that.
So first, let's thank Trustee Chamberlain for trekking down to Springfield today to do that. And the village is happy that you did so. So thank you. And then with regard to the questionnaire that you circulated, I just have a question. Is that ultimately, you want the comments to be sent back to you, and then you're going to assemble everything and then present it back to the board for further discussion?
I think it depends on how many comments and of what type they are. At some point, we will just say it needs to go, and we'll talk with the migrants or people to clean it up. I think right now, among other things, the questions could be asked in a bit more of a neutral manner. They may have suggestions for us about different ways to ask a question that would help us to get the kind of input we're looking for, that sort of thing. So I don't have a definitive answer for you.
Okay, so my personal comments as trustee are that I took your document and I made comments to it and made changes. I can send that to you.
Okay, that'd be great.
But then ultimately, I personally would like it to come back before the board before it's actually finalized, so that we have some general discussion about it.
Okay.
I don't know how everyone else feels about that. That would be my preference.
So my guess is that everyone on the committee would say that it's fine, except that we just need to make sure that we're moving as quickly as possible. So I would say maybe one more pass back to the board, and then we should really get this out to our residents.
So why don't we try and maybe get everyone's comments to trustee Chamberlain by, I don't know, yeah, so we at least have a week to play with it, so before the next meeting, so maybe within 7 days, if everyone can do that. Then we
Yeah,
should
the
get
mayor
that
will
done.
be returning on Saturday, so we couldn't meet before then anyway. So if everyone could get them to me by Friday, I'll consolidate them and then have them ready for when he's back.
Is that doable for everybody?
This Friday.
By this Friday? Trustee Erickson? Eric Goldstein? Eric Goldstein, you can call me whatever you want. Trustee Erickson, Eric, from now on.
So I'm on the committee for the Heritage Site, and my comment to the other committee members would be that the questions be asked, well, as they stand right now, and I understand that you said the topic is important, and we do need to change the way we ask the questions, because as they stand right now, they're written very subjectively, in my opinion, and they're biased. And if you look at all the questions, the answer is yes to every single question. If you really look at it, do you believe, I'll give just one example, but if you can look at every question, the first question is, do you believe that the village center could be a valuable Riverwoods amenity? Of course it could be. The answer is yes. But the real question should be is, somebody could say yes, but also not want it in our community. So I think we really need to be careful to not be biased in the way that we ask the questions, and I think we really owe it to our village residents to ask it in an unbiased manner. And I think we should leave our personal opinions about whether this should be built or not, out of the survey. Ultimately, we have a responsibility to be the voice of our residents. And me personally, I'm not for or against this project. I'm for it if the majority of the residents want it. And I'm against it if the majority of the residents are against it. So I think we really need to work on the questions. I suggested this in the committee meeting. I don't think I've been heard yet, but I'm hoping by the next time we can redraft the questions in an unbiased manner.
So I agree with everything you said, but my suggestion is it's far easier to say I don't like the question that I see than it is to come up with a question. So my suggestion would be if you have a suggestion for a better way to ask a question, or a better way to approach a topic, then by all means, submit that to us.
My own comment is I have suggested other ways to ask questions, and
they have been sort of rejected. Okay, well.
Okay,
anyway,
well,
I think we
obviously,
need to work-
we'll talk about that, but that certainly wasn't my impression.
I mean, my general reaction to the questionnaire also was that it was biased. And I tried to neutralize that, because I agree with Eric that it really needs to be, very, very objective. We can't put any personal preference in here. If this is truly supposed to be what it's for, which is to really gauge the sentiment in the village. But I think if everyone, looks at the questions that first we should thank the committee for putting these questions together, because obviously they've worked hard on doing it. Whether or not we think that they're, acceptable or not, there was a lot of work put into it. So if everyone would just get their comments to her, those changes that they would suggest, then maybe we can come to some consensus, and then at the next meeting, you can work on it further if there's a need to, hopefully not. Any other questions? Mr. Clayton?
Maybe
Go ahead.
comment first.
Sure. Trustee Chambers?
I just want to address something that Trustee Goldstein said, and please don't take this the wrong way, because I have many decisions. I'd like to see what the public has to say after they read the survey and take the survey. But keep in mind that this board, or some of this board, anyways, at some point in time, went through this very same process with the corner of Deerfield and Milwaukee. And those meetings, if you remember, if you were there, they were quite well attended by a lot of people that didn't want something at that corner. And we ended up with CubeSmart, which now we take nothing but heat for, because we voted for what we heard the majority of people wanted. So I think that we as trustees have to listen to the residents, and we have to take in everything. It's not an easy task. We have to take in everything that they give us and listen. But we also have to then use our best decision-making process to decide whether to go forward with something or not. Because I think there's more people in the village now than there were to think that the CubeSmart at that intersection was a mistake. But yet, at the time, that was hugely what was being told that was wanted by the village. So I'm not saying that we should go against the village residents, but we need to take their input and we need to get it in as many ways as we can. But then we also have to be the ones that make the decision. So I'm not saying we should go against 80% of the people in the village if they all say they want to do this. But we may have to make a hard decision if it's a 51-49%. It looks like it's a 59-49 one way or the other.
So I just want one comment on that. I agree with you, by the way, conceptually. I think, you're right, that sometimes you have to vote what your conscience is, even though maybe the constituents think differently. But the example you gave, I think, is not necessarily correct, because I think the problem with that example is that we listen to the vocal minority in that case. We listened to the vocal minority, which were the people in Meadow Lake who were going to be mostly affected by the CubeSmart, or by that corner, and they came out in droves. And as a result of that, we voted what we thought, I think, was what the constituents wanted. But that was really a small segment of the community, in my view. I could be wrong. This is just anecdotal. And so again, I think we run that same risk now, that there is a segment of the community, which is, affiliated more or less with the RPC, which is very vocal in wanting this village center to be developed. And so again, we run that same risk, I think, now with respect to this, if we listen to that possibly vocal minority. I'm not sure yet. I'm open-minded to it. I want to hear more, but we have been getting more and more comments from people since they recognize that this is actually a serious consideration by the village. we've been getting more and more emails from other people in the village saying, I'm not really sure I want this. At least I have, I've been getting emails, I think everybody's been getting, I've been getting
We've
emails.
had an email in quite a while.
Oh, really? I got one recently. So, so that's my only comment, not as mayor pro tem, but as just a trustee.
Okay, no, no,
So, as a follow-up to that, and also for those who are listening, that's one of the reasons that we want to use the Mind Mixer program software, so that we can get as many comments as possible. I think those who are vocal will always be the minority. The majority stays silent. So I think what's really important is to listen to what people have to say and what their reasoning is. So it's not just numbers, but it's the reasons. And I think that's, excuse me, one of the things that hopefully the Mind Mixer software will help us with, because it allows for some discussion. So that should make things a little more interesting, if nothing else.
Okay, anything else on this topic? I will move on. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Clayton.
That's okay. I just wanted to add a note, and I think Trustee Chamberlain just covered it. That had to do with the fact that the Mind Mixer tool is really designed not to be a pure quantitative survey kind of a tool, but it's more of a tool that's designed, a planning tool that's designed to engage the community in a dialogue. So it's kind of a mixture between what you might think of as a Survey Monkey kind of a thing and a Facebook kind of a thing. So at least that's the way I think about it. So I think there's going to be adequate opportunity for people of different viewpoints to be able to post their comments and exchange their views with one another. That's what the tool is designed to do, as well as just trying to collect responses. So from that perspective, I think some of the questions were designed to try to elicit that kind of dialogue in and of itself. But I take what the comments that have been made so far, but it is, I just wanted to add that flavor to what's going on. It is more of a dialogue producing tool than it is a quantitative measurement tool.
Thanks. I'm wondering, and maybe you know the answer to this, if not, maybe Cheryl, you know the answer to this. How will the residents get notice that the Mind Mixer tool is available for comments?
I do know the answer. So maybe a month or so ago, I listed all of the ways that we would let the residents know. And so
It's on the,
so it'll be on the website. People will, we're going to use all the tools that we have, basically. So there's an announcement, there's a special Village Voice coming out. There's going to be an announcement there. It'll be on the website. There, for those who have provided emails, they will get emails. There will be signage.
Mailing, can we do a mailing? Were you planning on doing mailing?
Well, we could do a mailing in addition to the Village Voice.
we spoke.
Because that really always opens up Village Voice. I mean, I think that if we're gonna do something and we want everybody's input, we should make sure that people get a letter that is specifically dedicated to that. It's just my opinion. I mean,
Yeah, that was one of the options that was listed.
And this letter would direct them to Mind Mixer.
Yes.
And if they were not computer literate or had access to a computer,
We talked about that, so there will be something available at Village Hall on paper.
Anything else? Oh, we have another question from Mr. Needleman.
Not so much a question, just, and I haven't been engaged in what the questionnaire is going to be about, but I think the one thing that we find in situations like these is we talk about different segments of the village coming out, whether it's the vocal minority or not, and I certainly was a first-hand participant in that last one, that I think it's important that we make sure all the information is there, and obviously there's been a huge change in the village finances since we began looking into this. And I don't think it's unreasonable to somehow, within that questionnaire, let the village know that, yes, we all want it, but there is a caveat to it now with the change in village financing. I will tell you that when that came up and we talked about the corner, and since the change, I've had a number of people who were extremely engaged in that, preventing the McDonald's and the gas station, tell me if they would have been aware, like we all would have been aware at the time that there was a change, that would have definitely changed their thinking, which is why I am bringing that up. A number of Meadow Lake residents have told me, as much as they were against it, if they would have understood the village financing, if we all would have known it at the time, it would have changed their thinking. So I'm not sure how to communicate that, that's up to you, but I think it's important that they understand that there is that change now.
Thank you. Any other visitors wishing to address? Okay. No. Oh, wait, there is Mr.
Visitors wanting to address? Yes.
Former trustee.
Hello, my name is Michael Bauman. I am a resident of Riverwoods. I live over at 2500 Greenbrier Lane. And I'm here for, it's actually, your discussion is a nice segue into the reason why I came to speak here. I'd first like to just be unequivocal, is that I'm opposed to this campus plan. I don't think that it is a wise use of village resources, and I don't think you're addressing any unmet needs that are in the village. The reason why I come to that conclusion is based off of my experience in developing commercial products. Over the last 25 years, I've developed products for healthcare and pharmaceutical companies that are currently bringing in about $2.5 billion in annual revenues. And there's a standard process that you go through when you develop a product. The first step is that you have to identify, is there a market? And then the second step you do is you determine, is there an unmet need in that market? And then if there is an unmet need, you then start to develop very simple concepts. And when I talk about concepts, I'm not talking about setting up all of these plans and making all of these decisions ahead of time. It's mainly like a small paragraph or a couple of designs, maybe some pictures or things like that, that you can go back and talk to people who are in that specific market that would be in that category of having that unmet need. And you ask that simple question, is there an unmet need? Is this something that you would be interested in? Because in the end, when you develop a product, or if you want to develop the campus here, you want to make it so that it's something that people are interested in, they're excited in, and that they're willing to pay money for. Because that's what we're talking about, spending a lot of money. What I'm concerned here is that this process hasn't been followed with regards to the campus. I've been going through a lot of the village hall meeting minutes since this was originally proposed in September 2016. And what's interesting about it is that really this was presented as kind of a complete plan, and we wanted to put bids in for it immediately. And it kind of bypassed feedback from, getting feedback from the residents. And in fact, if you read through the minutes, the trustees at the time had even said that we needed to get feedback from the residents. I applaud your desire to get the survey data back from that. But one of the things I think that you guys are also ignoring is that you have a treasure trove of data from your strategic planning survey that was held back in 2015. In fact, if you look at the plan that that survey plan, it actually collected a ton of demographic data. And there's some interesting statistics, and I can give you a couple of handouts from that because I still have that data. It's a matter of public record. And first of all, 58% of all households back in 2015 had no children in this village. And if you go, okay, well then what's going to happen is going to be a lot of turnover because we've got people who are empty nesters and eventually they'll leave and move out. Anecdotally, I think if you saw the article in the Tribune yesterday about Fern Brown. Fern Brown is actually a mother to one of my neighbors, Hal Brown. And Fern moved to the village from Highland Park in 1969. She's been here for 50 years. She's still here. She celebrated her 100th birthday. And her kids, Hal is one of them, is my neighbor. He's been here most of his life. He raised his kids. He's not moving out. What happens, and what we saw from that data in the 2015 strategic survey, is that people move here, they stay here until they die. So you really have to look at life expectancy versus the median age. The reason why I want to draw attention to that is that what I'm concerned about this survey, because there was talk about possible bias here, is there's also another risk that you face. It's called fallacy of sunk costs. And it's something that we do when you develop new products. There's always you go through stage gates where you're asking yourself, do we still want to develop this product? Because you get feedback, you look at, okay, it's going to cost us more money than we anticipated, it's going to take longer, and then the market may have changed in that time period. And so what you always are looking for is, are you going to get that return on investment? Now, the fallacy of sunk costs is that what a person has a natural tendency to do, and it's human nature, we all fall victim to this, but you value a future expenditure based off of what you've already spent into it. And the concern I want to raise to the board is, if you were to get back from this mind meld or whatever the survey is, overwhelmingly negative information, would you kill the project based off of that negative information? Or would you value saying, hey, we've been working on this project since 2016, Trustee Chamberlain has gone down and done an excellent job of trying to get additional funds to the DNR and has made the case for this, and there are residents who have been tireless about this. But the question is that that's sunk cost. You will never get that back. You will never get that money. You will never get that time back. And that should not factor into your future decisions. So I wanted to raise that. Now, if you want to mine the strategic survey data, and I'll give some handouts afterwards, but if you look at the households that actually reported having children, and if you look back at that strategic survey, we had a 35% response rate. Statistical significance for a survey starts at 5%. We blew the doors off of that. And the great thing about that information is that we were able, through the coded information, without identifying who the people were, we could take the coded responses and link those to actual addresses, so we could see where in the village they are. If you then overlay on top of that map a half-mile radius surrounding all of the playgrounds in the area. So let's look at the playground in Thorngate, let's look at the playgrounds that are at the Wilmot Primary School, at Caruso, and then you look at the Park District up and down along Wilmot, then you look at the Bannockburn School, and you look at the Laura Sprague School. That alone covers all of our residences that had reported having any type of children in their household. And this went all the way up to 18 years old. So we were essentially taking from birth until 18. So in terms of that, what I'm just trying to say is that if you do some research, the question is that, is there an unmet need? Well, for playgrounds, there isn't an unmet need, because all of those facilities have playgrounds with slides and swings and fun things like that, as well as basketball courts. And they're all within a half-mile radius, which is a 10-minute walk or a 5-minute bike ride. Now, if you look at putting one down here and you use that same half-mile radius, it essentially ignores the north half of the village, because essentially for them to be able to get down here, they would have to travel at least 15 minutes by car or 15 minutes by bike or a 20 or 30-minute walk. And that's assuming that there's a bike path that they can take to get there. So what I want to at least bring to your attention is that please evaluate from a wide variety of perspectives. Please ignore whatever effort that you put into as effort and sunk costs, and treat them as truly sunk costs. And then ask yourself, does this really align with our priorities? Because if you look back at that strategic survey, the top five priorities from the survey for the village that residents were willing to say, this is a top priority in general, and I'm willing to spend money on it, it was talking about village-owned infrastructure like sewer and water systems, adequate level of police services, financial planning, traffic flow and congestion, and village services. So those are the things that were collected, and I think you'll find that if you can go back through that survey, that was extremely unbiased. You guys are, for the most of the part, most of the trustees on the board were on the board at the time of that survey. And I highly recommend that you go back through that. And I will even offer, if you want help analyzing the data, I would be more than happy, because I've got them all in a database, and you can run individual queries if you want to find out where individuals are located throughout the village. And please remember too, one last point in closing, is that in that survey, we also were doing demographic analysis. We were trying to identify through a series of questions, did people fall into the category of like a woodland preservationist, someone here who's just here primarily for a retreat seeker, they're here for privacy as their primary. And we looked at North Shore suburbanites, people who are just here because it's the North Shore, and then other individuals who thought, well, I came to Riverwoods because it's bigger is better, because you have larger lot sizes and you can build a larger house. And what you find is that the woodland preservationists amount to about 28%. So, of the village, based off of that demographic analysis. And that means that 2/3 of the village are, and I can't pull off the top of my head, but I think in terms of the privacy seekers, you had approximately 35%. So people are moving to the village not because of they want to plant native plants or anything like that. They're here because they want the privacy that is really afforded them when you buy a house in Riverwoods. And then that, I think what I'm just recommending is use all sources of information when you make your decision. And I realize, well, as Trustee Jannerson had indicated, is that it is difficult. I remember being on the board when that decision was made with regards to CubeSmart. And I think one of the things that the discussion that was forgotten is that at the time of the McDonald's decision, is the village didn't own that property. And the CubeSmart was a way for the village to actually purchase that property and control the fate. And if you look at it, the concern about building a gas station and McDonald's was the impact of traffic at that corner. And the thing is that putting a CubeSmart in, which is only open up certain hours, I think everyone can agree that that place has not had significant impact on traffic. So those are some of the other concerns that went into it. Thank you for your time, and like I said, I am more than happy to help analyze any of that strategic data, or if you'd like help with any future surveys.
Thank you. If you can give us the data, that'd be great. I'm
Sure, it's actually part of the record.
We do, but if he's assembled it, it's convenient, and it's in a certain form that's easy to.
Here, there are a couple of maps, sure, I only have 4 copies.
Okay.
But it shows the location of the households and children, location of respondents, and then there's a radius for centered around the playgrounds.
Thank you. I would just make one comment. I think your comments are interesting, and I'm sure are going to be well received by the trustees. But at the same time, I think that you focus a lot on the children in the community, and I think, from my understanding, at least from my initial reading of the questionnaire, and from what I've seen of the preliminary plan, while there are certainly some facilities available for children, it's also, I think, designed to develop more of a community atmosphere for adults as well as children. So I don't think it's really children-centric, but obviously there is a lot of things that are for children, but that's for discussion. Okay. Approval of bills. Do I have a motion? I don't think there were any other visitors, right? That was it? Oh, I'm sorry. Can you state your name?
Rita O'Grady, 408 Greenbrier Lane.
Would you mind stepping up? Thank you.
Because I live so close to Village Hall.
Can you press the button? No, sure. Oh, shouldn't have to? Okay, I'm sorry.
That was on.
I'm affected by all the lighting here on campus, and I talked to the mayor last week and asked if there's something that they could do. Shines right into all of our bedrooms, which are usually on the wooded side of the property, and the living areas. Where before, when we moved in here 22 years ago, it was a tiny little log cabin and very quiet, and no big homes around here. So given that we have very strict guidelines for residents, I was hoping that the village would look into that with what lighting they have here, since no one is here after 1 o'clock usually, unless there's an event. that those lights could be turned off, since you have a security system and a police that are, a few minutes away. He said he would look into it, but he thought maybe that there was a requirement that they have this for insurance. But he has mentioned in the past that he really wants to be a good neighbor, and I think that's one of the things that concerns residents about the park and the trails and that sort of thing, that there's gonna be lighting that's, and perhaps a little bit more than that, that would be of concern.
Thanks.
So,
Trustee
if
James,
I may respond.
Yeah, I think actually I saw an email that was submitted by Trustee James.
The mayor sent your email to me.
Okay, good.
So, there's always something that can be done, I'm sure. I don't think, there's no requirement that the lights stay on by state law or anything, so
Okay,
that's,
and not insurance.
I don't think there's an insurance requirement either. Currently, and then this is gonna sound like it's a made-up excuse, but currently, all the lights in the parking lot, including the two that shine on the flag, are all on the same circuit. And so if we turn the lights off in the parking lot, we do have to bring the flag down at night. Which I know, but, so that being said, we can check with the contractor to see if he can pull another circuit out there and make the flagpole lights on their own circuit, so we can leave those on 24/7.
Where is the flagpole?
Right out there. I mean, it's right in the middle of the circle, it's right out the front door. Those lights shine out, so you probably would never even see those.
They're ones, he said I asked him the height of the light poles, because I see in the ordinance for homeowners that you can't have anything over 12 feet. And he thought it was over 25 feet.
Well, but this is not considered a residential property.
I know.
It's the same as Discover Park.
No, I understand, but it's within this residential neighborhood, which is kind of unusual for a village hall to be right here, surrounded by all these homes.
That's, well,